I'd been counting down the days until this dinner. I hadn't seen my parents in a few weeks, and I was excited to finally have some good news to share. I'd saved enough to buy a house, a real house, not an apartment like the tiny one I'd been renting. It felt like a huge step forward, something solid, something that was mine, and I wanted to tell them about it. I needed them to see that I wasn't just drifting, that I was building something for myself. When I walked through the door of my parents' house, I felt the familiar mix of nostalgia and unease. The smell of garlic and roasting chicken filled the air, but there was something off, something in the way my mom, Marlene, greeted me with a little too much enthusiasm. Her smile was too wide, her eyes darting toward my brother Daniel, who was sitting at the table, fidgeting with his phone. His wife, Rebecca, was perched next to him, her lips pressed together like she was trying not to say something. "Emily," my mom exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "So good to see you, sweetheart. We're so glad you could make it." I returned the hug, but my stomach twisted. Something was up. I could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. "Dinner's almost ready," Marlene said, her voice a little too chipper. "But before we eat, Daniel has something he wants to share with you." I glanced at Daniel, and he straightened up, clearing his throat. "It's a new investment opportunity," he said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "A surefire thing. I'm telling you, Em. This is big. A real game changer." My excitement about the house felt like it was slipping away, replaced by confusion. "What kind of investment?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "It's a business venture," Daniel explained. "I can show you the details later, but trust me, it's solid." "Mom and Dad are already on board." I raised an eyebrow. "Mom, Dad, are you serious? After the last couple of ventures you've backed, you think this one is a sure thing?" Marlene shot me a look, and Daniel's jaw tightened. "Emily," she said slowly, "you've got all that money just sitting there in your savings. It'd be smart for you to invest, don't you think? Help the family out." My heart dropped. It wasn't the question that got to me. It was the expectation behind it. The unspoken weight of it. I felt my stomach churn as I glanced from Daniel to my mom and dad. Something about the way they were looking at me made me feel small, like they were all waiting for me to fall in line. And I knew exactly where this was headed. Another business failure, another drain on my savings, and another round of family disappointment. But I wasn't going to let them pull me in this time. Not again. I shook my head, refusing to let myself get sucked into this. Number absolutely not. I'm not investing in Daniel's idea. Not after the last 3 businesses. Those were disasters, Daniel. I don't know why you think this one's going to be any different. Daniel's face flushed. He leaned forward, his voice tight. "It is different. I've learned a lot from the past. This time, I've got the right team behind me, and I've done my homework. Way more than before. You can't keep judging me based on the mistakes I made years ago." Rebecca's fingers curled around his arm, her face a mask of controlled frustration. "He's serious about this, Emily. You should at least hear him out before you shut it down." "I don't need to hear him out. I've seen this movie before, and it doesn't end well for anyone," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I worked my ass off to save that money. You think I'm going to risk it on something that doesn't even make sense? No way." Marlene, who'd been watching the exchange closely, finally spoke up, her voice syrupy sweet but carrying an edge. "Emily, you're being selfish. You've been saving all this time, and what's it for? To let it sit there? To keep it locked up like some treasure while your brother's trying to build something real?" I stared at her, stunned. "It's my money, Mom. I saved it so I could buy a house, something I can actually count on." Marlene's eyes narrowed. "And you can count on this, Emily. This is family, and you're turning your back on us. Your savings could make a difference. It's not like you need that money for anything else. What else are you waiting for?" Her words hit like a slap, a reminder of how they'd always treated my choices like afterthoughts, as though my dreams didn't matter as much as theirs. I could feel my chest tightening, a mix of anger and betrayal burning in my throat. "No," I repeated, my voice steady but firm. "I'm not doing it, and I'm not going to pretend like this is anything but a bad idea. You've asked me to bail you out too many times. I'm done." Daniel stood up now, his fists clenched at his sides. "You don't get it, Em. We need you. This isn't just about me. This is about the family. You're not even trying to help us." I shot him a look that could have frozen water. "I'm not your safety net, Daniel. I'm not going to lose everything I've worked for just because you can't get your shit together. I'm tired of being the one who gets called when things fall apart." The room went silent, heavy. Then my father, Frank, spoke, his voice like gravel. "You need to get your priorities straight, Emily. Either you invest in this, or you're out. You're part of this family, and you'll either help us, or we'll have nothing to do with you." The words hit me like a punch. I stared at him, my whole body stiff with disbelief. You're giving me an ultimatum?" Frank didn't flinch. "You're being selfish, and you know it. We've helped you in every way we can. And now it's your turn to help. If you can't do that, then don't bother coming back. You're not welcome here anymore." It felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I wasn't just rejecting their idea, I was rejecting them. And they were rejecting me right back. This was it. The line in the sand. I stood up without a word, my chair scraping hard against the floor. "Fine, I'm done," I said, my voice flat, emotion bubbling beneath. I couldn't even look at them anymore. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "Emily!" Marlene called after me, but I didn't turn around. I could hear Frank shouting something, Daniel calling my name, but I couldn't hear the words over the pounding of my own heartbeat. I slammed the door behind me and walked down the steps, my legs shaky but determined. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there another second. In the car, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Tears stung at the back of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I wasn't sad. I was furious, betrayed, and completely done. I'd thought I was going to share something good with them tonight, something that would make them proud. Instead, I was walking away from the people I thought I could count on. And now, I didn't know if I could ever go back. I sat in the car for what felt like hours, the engine off, the world outside blurry through the window. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. My father's ultimatum echoed in my ears. Either you invest, or you're out. The anger was still there, hot in my chest, but something else settled in too. Sadness, disappointment, maybe even a little guilt. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a world I thought I understood but had no idea how to navigate anymore. All the things I'd worked for, all the boundaries I'd carefully built, suddenly felt fragile. I'd just turned my back on my family, and that felt like a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't afford to let my life be held hostage by their mistakes. If I let this go, if I gave in, I'd be sacrificing my future, for a business that wasn't even stable enough to stand on its own. I was 28. I had one shot at building the life I wanted, and it wasn't going to be built on the broken promises of people who thought money could fix everything. I pulled my phone from my purse, my fingers shaking slightly as I unlocked it. I didn't even think twice before I blocked my parents' numbers. I didn't want to see their calls light up the screen, didn't want to hear the pleading messages or the guilt trips anymore. I muted their numbers for now. I couldn't keep answering their calls, acting like everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed space. I opened my contacts and found my realtor's number scrolling through our old messages. I'd been holding off on making the final decision, always telling myself I'd wait for the right moment. Well, there was no right moment. The right moment was now. My thumb hovered over the screen before I tapped out the message. "I'm ready. Let's move forward with the house." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, before the doubt could creep in. This was the life I wanted, the one I could build for myself, not a house of cards held up by family expectations. I needed something real. The message sent, I sank back into the seat, eyes closing for a moment. The sound of my heartbeat was loud in the quiet car. I could feel the weight of what I'd just decided, but there was also a kind of relief, like I'd let go of a rope that had been pulling me down. I stared out the windshield at the dark streets, the apartment building I called home, looming in the distance. It was small, nothing special, but it was mine. I'd worked hard for it. I'd fought to keep it together through everything, and it had been enough. But now, the house, the one I'd been dreaming about, picturing in my mind for months, was a real possibility. I was going to buy it. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't just about the house. It was about taking control. For the first time in a long time, I was making decisions for myself. Not for my parents, not for Daniel, not for anyone but me. I stood up, grabbing my bag and heading inside. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. The next few weeks would be a whirlwind, and I had no time for distractions. I threw my phone on the kitchen counter and started unpacking a box of things I'd been meaning to get to. But as I pulled things out, old photos, books, random papers, the thought of my family, their disappointment, was still gnawing at the edges of my mind. I wasn't going to lie. It stung, but it was a different kind of sting now, like a cut that was painful at first but would eventually heal. The kind of pain that came with finally choosing yourself. I wasn't going to be their fallback anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who picked up the pieces when they screwed up. I was done. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what that meant. The day I moved into the townhouse felt like one of those moments you see in movies, when everything comes together perfectly, but with just enough nervous energy to keep it from feeling too cheesy. I stood in the doorway for a second, taking it all in. The hardwood floors that gleamed under the soft light coming through the windows. The space that stretched out ahead of me. It was mine, my decision, my life, my future. I felt a little bit like I was in a dream, but also a little like I didn't deserve this. I'd worked hard, sure, but there had been a lot of moments when I didn't think I was going to get here. Now, standing in the middle of the living room, a box in each hand, I finally felt like I had a shot at something real, something all my own. The first thing I did was set up my home office. It was the most important space for me, especially since I worked from home so much. The desk went against the far wall, just under the window so I could look out at the small garden when I took breaks. The chair was soft, not the office chair I had at my old place, but one that was comfortable and just for me. I hung a couple of photos on the wall, trying not to get too caught up in making everything perfect, and remembering that this was supposed to feel like home. It felt good settling into the space, arranging my books and gadgets in ways that made sense to me, not to anyone else. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a peace that had been missing for years. No more fighting for my space. No more questioning my decisions just because they didn't fit into someone else's idea of what I should be doing. I pulled a box of old pictures off the shelf, sitting on the floor for a while just to look through them. I hadn't been able to go through them when I packed up my old apartment. Too many memories, too much history. But now here, it felt easier to sift through the past. There were pictures of me as a kid, bright-eyed and carefree, even in the middle of the chaos that was my family. I found one of me and Daniel from when we were little, grinning in matching t-shirts on a family vacation. I stared at it for a while, trying to remember the last time I'd felt that close to him. It was hard, honestly. Things had shifted so much, and I wasn't sure how or when it happened. My phone buzzed in the back pocket of my jeans, pulling me from my thoughts. I pulled it out, already dreading who it might be. When I saw Rebecca's name on the screen, my stomach tightened. "Hey, Emily, we might have some investors soon. Things are looking better. Just thought you'd want to know." I stared at the message for a long time, the words spinning in my head, finally taking off. My first instinct was to feel some kind of regret. A little voice in my head whispered that I could have helped them. Maybe this time it would be different. I could have been part of the success. But then I pushed that thought aside. I'd been down that road too many times, and every time it ended the same way. It wasn't my responsibility to fix their mistakes anymore. I wasn't going to risk everything I'd worked for, not again. I didn't respond. Not immediately, and not at all, really. I couldn't. I had to keep moving forward, even if the guilt twisted in my stomach. Maybe that made me selfish. Maybe it made me cold. But I was learning that sometimes self-preservation had to come first. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter, not bothering to look at it again. I had things to focus on. My life. There were new projects at work I could throw myself into, new people to meet, new opportunities that didn't come with strings attached. As the days went by, I started building momentum. I attended a couple of tech meetups, something I hadn't done in ages. I even made a few new connections, people who were passionate about the same things I was, people who didn't see me as a safety net or a source of money. Just me, Emily. And for the first time in forever, that felt right. I still thought about my family sometimes. I thought about how hard it had been to walk away, how my parents would always view me as the one who couldn't be counted on, the one who chose not to help. But then I reminded myself that I had helped for years, and in the end, they'd never let me be anything other than what they wanted me to be. I had to stop letting them pull me into their mess. One night, after another long day of work, I sat on the couch with a glass of wine and flicked through Netflix. It wasn't anything fancy, but the quiet of the townhouse felt like a warm hug I hadn't known I needed. No drama, no constant pressure, just peace. And that's when it hit me. I was finally living life on my own terms, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my family, take that away from me. A year had passed, and things had started to settle. The townhouse felt more like home with each passing day. Work was going well. I had built up a solid network, and I was finally able to breathe without feeling like I was drowning in my past. Then, one night, I saw the message from my mother pop up on my phone. "Emily, we need to talk. It's about Daniel. It's serious. Please come to dinner." My stomach tightened as soon as I read it. I hadn't heard from them in months, not directly anyway. There had been a few half-hearted texts and some distant family updates, but nothing like this. It felt like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to open that door again, not after everything. But something about the way she worded it, serious, made me pause. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the reply. I could ignore it, but I knew that would eat at me, and I'd always been the one to show up, even when I knew better. So, against my better judgment, I texted back, "Okay, I'll be there." The night of the dinner, I felt every ounce of that old anxiety creeping back in, the kind that weighed on you long before you even stepped through the door. I kept trying to push it away, reminding myself that I had built a new life for myself. I was not the same person who would jump at their beck and call, but still, walking up to their front door felt like I was walking back into a storm. When I stepped inside, the familiar scent of Marlene's cooking was missing. Instead, the air felt thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. Daniel and his wife, Rebecca, were sitting at the kitchen table, both of them looking like they hadn't slept in days. Marlene was in the living room, wringing her hands. Frank was nowhere to be seen. "Emily," Marlene said, her voice tight. "Thank you for coming." I didn't answer right away, just nodded. Something in her eyes made my chest tighten. The tension was thick, and I could feel the weight of it pressing in on me, the silence louder than anything they could say. "Sit down, sweetheart," Marlene insisted, but I hesitated before lowering myself into the empty chair. I glanced over at Daniel, who was avoiding my gaze. Rebecca was the first to speak. "They've gone south," she said, her voice strained, as though she was choking on the words. Daniel's investment, well, it failed. Again. I'd already suspected as much. I'd heard rumors through the grapevine about Daniel's business, but hearing it confirmed felt like a punch to the gut. "It was supposed to be different this time," Daniel muttered, running his hands through his hair. "We had everything lined up, all the right people. I thought this one would work." "And now we're in deep," Marlene added, her voice wobbling. "We don't know where to turn. The debts are piling up and Daniel's already maxed out everything we have." I felt the room closing in on me, my palms beginning to sweat. "So what are you asking me to do here?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. I couldn't help it. There was a cold edge to my voice now, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Frank sat silently at the table, his face drawn and pale. He didn't argue this time, didn't push like before. Marlene took a deep breath, like she was preparing herself for a fight. "We need you to help us, Emily. We don't know who else to turn to. Your savings? You've built something for yourself. You've got that house. You could sell it, help us cover the debts. It would make everything right again." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You want me to sell my house?" The words felt foreign, like I couldn't even recognize them coming from my mouth. Daniel's voice was low but urgent. "It's not just for me, Em. It's for everyone. We can't do this without you. We're desperate. This is it. If you sell your place, we can start over. We'll pay you back." I promise. I looked at them, each of them pleading, trying to convince me to pull me back in. Marlene's eyes were wide with desperation, and I could see the cracks forming in the walls of her carefully constructed facade. I didn't know what to say at first. There was a part of me that felt bad, that wanted to help, wanted to fix everything like I always had. But as I sat there, looking at them, looking at Daniel, who had failed again, just like I'd known he would, it hit me, clear as day. I couldn't do it. I couldn't risk everything I had worked for, everything I had built, on a maybe. No, I said, my voice flat, final. I'm not selling my house. I'm not giving up everything I've worked for just so you can do this again. You've had your chances, Daniel. I've been here every time you needed me, and every time it's the same thing. I'm done being part of that cycle. There was a long, painful silence. Marlene's face crumpled, her tears welling up, but I didn't flinch. Emily, please, she whispered, her voice cracking. We're your family. Don't turn your back on us now. I shook my head, standing up abruptly. I'm sorry, I can't. I didn't look back as I walked out the door. As soon as the car door slammed behind me, I could finally breathe again. But even as I drove away, the guilt gnawed at me, and part of me wondered if I would ever truly be free from them. I drove in silence for what felt like hours, the hum of the tires on the road somehow louder than the storm swirling in my chest. The weight of what had just happened settled on me like a heavy coat, one I couldn't shake off no matter how hard I tried. I'd said no, I had stood my ground, and yet, something inside me felt wrong, guilty, like I was the one who had failed them. But as the night stretched on, I knew there was no going back. I wasn't going to give up my house for them. Not after everything they'd put me through. They had their chances, over and over, and they'd squandered every single one of them. I barely made it inside my apartment before my phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a familiar name. It was my mom. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I wasn't going to get peace until I did. Emily, Marlene's voice came through, soft but loaded with expectation. Please, sweetheart. I know this isn't easy, but you can't just walk away. We need you. We've always helped you. Don't you remember that? I felt a tightness in my throat, but I bit back the response that wanted to claw its way out. I remember, Mom. I remember everything you've done for me. Well, then you know what we've done. How hard we've worked for this family, she continued, her voice wobbling. We've always been there for you, and now, when we need help, you turn your back on us. That was it, the part that always got to me, the guilt trip. They'd always pull it like clockwork. My stomach turned. I'm not turning my back on you. I'm just not going to sacrifice everything I've worked for. I built this life, Mom. I earned it. There was a long pause before she responded. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us. You wouldn't even have that house if we hadn't put you in a position to make it happen. We're your family, Emily. We've given you everything. I felt my blood start to boil. I wanted to scream, to tell her how many times they'd pulled me in with that line, how many times they'd asked for my money, my time, my everything, and then turned around and wasted it. I swallowed hard, pushing the words down, trying to keep my composure. You've never supported me, though, I said, the words coming out sharper than I'd intended. Not my dreams, not who I wanted to be. I was always just the one who bailed you out, always the one who had to pick up the pieces. You say you've always been there for me, but that's not true. You've only been there when you needed something from me. A sharp intake of breath came through the line. That's not fair, Emily, Marlene whispered. You've forgotten where you came from. You think you're better than us now? Is that it? No, Mom, I snapped, my heart pounding in my chest. I don't think I'm better than you. I just think I deserve something for myself. I deserve to have a life where I don't have to constantly clean up the messes you all make. I'm done being your backup plan. I could hear her muffling the phone, probably talking to Daniel, but I didn't care. I was done. Done with their demands. Done with their manipulation. The phone crackled as Daniel's voice came through, rough and edged with frustration. You don't get it, do you, Em? This isn't just about us. It's about the family. You're abandoning us when we need you most. You're just going to walk away from everything we've given you, I laughed. But it wasn't a real laugh. It was bitter. I'm not abandoning anyone, Daniel. I'm choosing myself, for once. And I don't think you're going to understand that, because it's always been about what you need, what you want. You've never cared about what I need. I always cared about you, he shot back. The words laced with hurt and anger. But you never cared enough to help us. You've got your nice little life now, your little house, and you've forgotten about us. My hands were shaking now, and I could feel the anger rising, burning through me. I haven't forgotten you. I'm just done. I've spent too many years trying to fix things for you, but I can't do it anymore. There was a long silence. Then Daniel said something that hit harder than anything he'd ever said to me before. You're just like Mom. Selfish. You're leaving us to drown. I felt the tears well up in my eyes, but I forced them down. This wasn't about guilt anymore. It was about taking back my life. I couldn't keep playing their game. I'm not like Mom, I said quietly. But I'm not going to let you drag me down with you. I'm sorry, Daniel. But this is where I draw the line. I hung up before anyone could say anything else, the finality of it settling in my chest. The relief came in waves, but the anger, the disappointment, they stuck with me. I walked out of my apartment and back to my car. Every step a mixture of rage and relief. And as I drove away, the knot in my stomach loosened just a little. They could call me selfish. They could say whatever they wanted. But I knew, deep down, I had done the right thing. I thought that last conversation would be the end of it. I thought I'd finally drawn the line and could walk away, let the dust settle, and focus on my own life. But I should have known better. I was leaving for a work trip the next day, a few days away to get out of the city and away from the mess that was my family. I figured a change of scenery would help, give me space to breathe. I packed my bags in the quiet of my townhouse, barely thinking about what I was leaving behind. Just me, the open road, and a fresh start waiting. But the morning I left, I checked my phone to find a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers. At first, I figured it was some kind of spam. Then I saw my mom's name on one of the missed calls, and my stomach churned. I had blocked her, hadn't I? I opened my messages, dreading what I'd find, but there was nothing there, just silence. When I stepped out of the airport shuttle later that evening and walked up to my front door, my heart stopped. There, parked at the curb, was a black SUV with tinted windows. I didn't think much of it at first, assuming it was some random car, until I noticed two figures standing by my front gate. I froze. They were talking in low voices, their heads down, but the moment I stepped closer to my porch, one of them turned and locked eyes with me. My blood ran cold. It was a man, middle-aged, dressed in a dark suit. He stood a little too straight, like he was waiting for something, his posture stiff and deliberate. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but my pulse was already thrumming, the unease spreading from my chest to my limbs. The man smiled, too wide, too forced, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "We're looking for something," he said, his voice calm but clipped. "Actually, we're looking for you." I narrowed my eyes, suddenly understanding. "Who sent you?" The man didn't flinch. "Your family. They're in a bit of trouble, and they've asked for your assistance. They were clear. You can help." A cold wave of realization washed over me. They hired a private investigator. "Help with what?" I asked, though I knew the answer already. "Your brother, Daniel. His business is collapsing again. The debts are mounting. They need you to come through. They're asking you to sell the house." He stepped forward, his face unreadable. "It's really the only way." The words hit me like a slap. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding it again. My own parents, hiring some stranger to track me down and force me into something I'd already said no to. The betrayal burned hot, sharper than any cutting remark. I took a step back. I already told them no. I'm not selling my house. He didn't move, just waited, as if I were supposed to change my mind. "This is your family, miss," he said, his voice cold and smooth. "You don't want to let them down." I could feel my fists clenching. "You don't get to stand here and tell me what I should do for my family. My family doesn't respect me. I've been nothing but a backup plan for them, and I'm done." The man's eyes flickered, but he didn't respond. Just watched me closely, like he was waiting for me to crack. "I don't care what they want," I continued, voice growing steadier. "Tell them I said no, and tell them if they ever send someone to my door again, I'll take legal action." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't respond. Just turned and motioned to the car. "Consider this a courtesy call," he said, before walking away, his shoes clicking on the pavement. The SUV idled, waiting. I stood frozen in place for a long minute, staring at the space where he had been, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But when the anger started to claw its way up again, I grabbed my phone and hit 911 before I could think better of it. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me like that. The dispatcher's voice on the other end was calm, but there was a slight tension in her tone as she listened. "Okay, we'll send someone over. Stay inside and lock the doors." I didn't know if the police would make it in time, but I didn't care. I needed to be sure I wasn't going to be bullied into anything else. I grabbed the bat I kept under the coat rack just in case. If my family thought this was some game, they were about to learn the rules had changed. By the time the police showed up, the SUV was gone, and the street was quiet again, almost too quiet. They didn't stay long, just took my statement and left me with a sense of lingering unease, but nothing more. The whole thing felt like some bad dream. I stood there, staring out at the empty street, the weight of what had just happened settling in. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It wasn't about Daniel or the money or even the house. This was about me, about drawing a line and not letting anyone, not even my parents, push me past it. But as the police drove away, I realized something. It wasn't just the investigator who had made me feel trapped. It was them. It had always been them. It had been a few weeks since the incident with the investigator, and I thought I could finally breathe. Work was picking up, the townhouse was feeling more like home every day, and I was starting to carve out a life that was truly mine. But then came the phone call that stopped me dead in my tracks. I was at my desk one morning, sipping coffee, when I saw a text notification from a mutual friend. Apparently, they were convinced I was hiding money or documents there. Something about a rumor from one of Daniel's friends. Her message was blunt, almost urgent. "Hey, did you hear about your parents? They've gotten themselves into some serious trouble. Sounds like they broke into someone's house thinking it was yours. The cops were involved. It's a mess." My stomach flipped. I sat there for a second, staring at the screen, the words sinking in slowly. I couldn't believe it. My parents? Breaking into a neighbor's house? I quickly tapped out a response, my fingers shaking. "What happened? Is everything okay?" She replied almost immediately. "It's bad. They're facing charges for vandalism and trespassing. Looks like they thought you were hiding something, or maybe just trying to get back at you. It's all over town now." I dropped my phone on the desk, my heart pounding. The absurdity of it all hit me like a freight train. My parents had been so desperate, so consumed by their own failures, that they had resorted to something this extreme. It was like they'd completely lost touch with reality. As the shock faded, I felt something else settle in, something deeper. Vindication. I'd been right. I hadn't been selfish. I hadn't been the problem. I had done the right thing, cutting ties when I did, refusing to let them drag me back into their mess. Everything I'd feared about them always pulling me into their chaos had come true. And now they were facing the consequences. I tried to focus on work, tried to block out the noise of my racing thoughts, but the news kept replaying in my head. They'd broken into someone's home. I couldn't believe it. A few days later, I heard more details through the same friend. My parents were now facing criminal charges for vandalism and trespassing, and the whole thing had put them in even worse financial trouble. Their debts were mounting, and now they had legal fees on top of everything else. I felt that same mixture of anger and relief again. The anger, of course, was easy to understand. My parents had done something unforgivable, but the relief was more complicated. I didn't want them to suffer, at least not like this. But the weight of their actions felt like the final proof I needed. They had always thought they could take from me, push me into their world of chaos and neediness. But they were finally seeing the consequences of their actions. A week after that, my phone rang while I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through some work emails. It was a local number I didn't recognize. I answered, already dreading who it might be. "Emily," my mother's voice came through, small and hesitant. "It's your mom." I paused for a second, not sure how to respond. My heart was still heavy from everything that had happened, but there was something in her tone that made me hesitate. "What's going on?" I finally asked. Trying to keep my voice level, she sighed, and for the first time in a long while, I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I wanted to apologize for everything, for what's happened with Daniel, for what we've put you through. I know we've made mistakes, and I know we've hurt you." The silence on the other end of the line stretched on. I could hear her breathing, waiting for me to say something, but I wasn't sure what to say. I don't know how we got here, Emily, she continued, her voice breaking. But I want to make things right. Please. I need you to come home. We're a family, and I've been so wrong. Please forgive me. Her words hung in the air, thick with regret and emotion. I could hear the desperation in her voice. And for a moment, I almost felt guilty for not rushing to fix everything. But then I remembered why I'd walked away in the first place. I remembered the years of manipulation, the guilt trips, the constant demands. I had tried to fix things for them so many times, only to watch them fall apart. And now they wanted me to come back and clean up their mess again, to bail them out of the consequences of their own actions. No, Mom, I said, my voice clear and steady. I can't come back. I've already given you everything I have. And every time, it's never enough. You've never supported me, not really. You've only ever wanted me to fix what you couldn't. I paused, the weight of the decision settling deep in my chest. I'm sorry for what's happened, but I can't keep being a backup plan for you. I've built a life for myself, and I'm not going to throw that away. I can't help you anymore. There was a long pause, and I almost thought she was going to cry out, but the words never came. I'm sorry, I said again, this time softer. But I can't do this, not anymore. I hung up the phone, and for a moment I just sat there, staring at the wall. I wasn't angry anymore, not really. But I was tired of being pulled into their drama, tired of carrying their burden. In that moment, I knew without a doubt that I had made the right decision. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I could finally walk away, and this time, I wasn't looking back. It's been almost a year since I last spoke to my parents, and in that time, everything has changed. I've settled into a life that feels like mine in a way I never thought possible. My career has taken off, and I'm finally working on projects that excite me. I've made real progress, built connections, and found my own rhythm. And then, of course, there's Jack. Jack. He's been my rock, the steady presence I didn't know I needed. We met during a work project, one of those projects that was stressful enough to make you want to pull your hair out. But somehow, we found time to laugh, to talk. He's the kind of person who listens without judgment, who pushes me to be better without making me feel small. When he proposed a few months ago, I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. I never imagined I'd find someone who saw me, really saw me, the way he does. Now, as we sit together, flipping through wedding magazines and debating over venue options, I feel this sense of peace, a real deep peace that I haven't had in years. Planning the wedding is exciting, but more than that, it's the life we're building together. It's the life I fought for, the one that's mine and mine alone. Sometimes, when I look back at everything, the years of chaos, the guilt, the endless demands, I can hardly recognize the person I was. The Emily who let herself be pulled in by family drama, who tried so hard to fix things that were never hers to fix. The Emily who thought love and loyalty meant sacrificing herself over and over again. But that person is gone, and in her place is someone stronger, someone who understands that it's okay to say no. It's okay to put yourself first, because in the end, no one else is going to live your life for you. Jack and I talk about our future, about the house we're going to buy and the trips we want to take. I've never been more sure of where I'm headed. For the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm waiting for something to fall apart. I'm not waiting for someone to need me to fix their mess. I'm just living. The phone doesn't ring with emergency calls anymore. My parents are no longer a presence in my life. And for the first time in a long time, I feel relief in that. I don't owe them anything. Not my time, not my money, not my heart. And I don't have to feel guilty about that. I sit in the quiet of our apartment, looking at Jack across the room as he makes some notes in his planner. The future we're building feels like an adventure, one that's mine to choose and shape. I can't wait to see where it goes, knowing that, for once, I'm the one in control.